day here. Why facts don't change our minds, from Elizabeth Colbert, or Colbert, depending on how you say it. And I like this picture. It's got anchors down at the bottom. Oh, there's the anchors. And it's quite lengthy. It's 12 pages. And she says the vaunted human capacity for reason may have more to do with winning arguments than with thinking straight. Okay? So she goes through several very interesting articles, or studies, rather, scientific studies. It says students who've been told they were almost always right on average are no more discerning than those who've been told they were mostly wrong. They were told that they got a bunch of perception answers right about suicide notes, it happens to be. And the ones that were told that they had high scores and had done well, even when they were told that it was all fake, rated themselves significantly better than the average student, even though they had zero grounds for believing this. And that's the gist of the article. The enigma of reason, and I don't agree with a lot of this stuff, but I thought this was funny. Humans' biggest advantage over other species is our ability to cooperate. But freeloading is always the best course of action for any given individual, which I don't think is true. I also don't think that we evolved. But the bottom line on that whole thing, and the thing that's really interesting, is the confirmation bias. Why are we built this way, or why did we evolve this way? Both. You can ask the question either way, it doesn't matter. But why do we think the way we do? If reason is designed to generate sound judgments, then it's hard to conceive of a more serious design flaw. See, design is implied, even though it's an evolutionary article. Serious design flaw than confirmation bias. Okay? And it says that if we were really in a survival environment, we wouldn't do well by sticking with the same belief, even though we were eaten by a monster or something. What these scientists say is it's my side bias, and it's really profound. Presented with someone else's argument, we're quite adept at spotting the weaknesses. Almost invariably, the positions we're blind about are our own. And that is so true. I've watched the marketing industry follow blindly the data path for decades. And interestingly, everyone admits that big data didn't get them what they wanted. AI is not getting them what they want, as pointed out earlier. And the promises are the same. The promises are the same as in the 80s when the computer revolution was getting going in companies. And we were told that if you just buy the System 34 because it's a unified picture of your company, you will understand your customers and what they're like. Did that happen? No. Has it happened yet? No. And so there's another study where they asked them to write out their answer, and then they gave them other people's answers and their own, but flipped which was which, and they took apart their own, which is good. It's always healthy. One of the things we learned in graduate level philosophy was and heck, I learned it in high school debate. You have to be able to argue the opponent's side. You have to be able to successfully defend the opponent, or you can't understand their position. And that is basic, so basic. So the first step in marketing would be understanding not your customers, but your competitors' claims. See if they're valid. See if you can defend them. See if you'd rather buy your competitor's product. Chrysler made a big breakthrough when they forced their designers to drive their own cars that they designed. They made a lot of improvements after that. Okay, and they asked students to describe how a toilet works, and it turns out it's more complicated. I actually went out and looked at how a toilet worked, diagrams and videos, and it turns out I do know how a toilet works. I've fixed many toilets. But anyway, that exercise of trying to explain what you believe goes a long way in revealing your own overestimation of your abilities. And there's a good part in here. It's hilarious. I actually wrote the author and said, do you realize that you have, you you call out. They call out the Affordable Care Act. People who believe that, and they said, well, now if three people concur, then we get much more smug about our views, and that's how we got the Trump administration. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What about the people who concur on the other side? And she's explicitly hard on the Trump side, and yet gives the other guys a pass. I thought that was hilarious. That her own confirmation bias, and there was, of course, no scientific study. She just threw this in about the Affordable Care Act and how Trump supporters are obviously biased, but she's not against Trump supporters. She had a couple more in there. She did mention our friends and pundits on CNN should spend less time pontificating and seeing if they can work out the implications of their own positions, which I think is also sound. But then she gets to the scientific method, which I thought was great. Science is a system that corrects for people's natural inclinations. You have to make it work. You have to replicate the experimental data. And this is why direct marketing is the most powerful marketing tool in the world. And why, even if you are committed to digital and you cannot be shaken in that conviction that digital is the answer to everything, you should still be executing experiments, especially with mail. As I always point out, we've got plenty of examples of Google and LinkedIn and PayPal and others mailing me, okay? Maybe they're just conducting experiments. Maybe they're just testing headlines in a really concrete way. But I'd rather have one good piece of information. And, there's other articles I was going to get to about how to prepare information. But the scientific method, go to scientificadvertising.com and you get a 100-year-old book that explains this. Okay? Scientific method and split testing can confirm your beliefs with solid evidence in a way that all the digital analytics, big data, AI will not, because they're not set up right to do it. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. And here she calls Donald Trump an anti-vaxxer, even though Barron got vaccinated. She just keeps throwing those things in as examples of confirmation bias, which illustrate her own. It's great. Anyway, so get your marketing tested. And if you don't know how, give an old guy with a beard who's been doing direct for 40 years a call. I'm John Miglosh. Have a great day.